Good evening and welcome. I'm Professor Martin Stringer, PVC at Swansea University, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening to the webinar to close Swansea University's Pride Month celebrations, one of a number of events that we've been holding over the last number of weeks to celebrate Pride during June and July of this year. And a particular warm welcome this evening to our guests tonight, Russell T Davies, Jill Nalder, and Christine Dobbs, who are going to share some thoughts deriving from Russell's brilliant TV sensation, It's a Sin. It's very rare that I get a chance to meet a real hero of mine. The last time was sitting next to Steve Reich at a concert of his music in the Royal Northern College of Music. But turning to Russell, I still remember sitting down with my partner to watch the first episode of Queer as Folk, and our shock that the broadcasters had actually allowed that to be aired, but also seeing, perhaps for the first time, a world that we were so familiar with portrayed on screen. Doctor Who, of course, was a very important part of my childhood, and I will always be grateful to Russell for bringing that back to our screens. And then more recently, in watching It's a Sin, a drama that captures so clearly the early years of the AIDS crisis that I lived through in Manchester. I still recall the prejudice, the fight for recognition, and the death of close friends from that time. It's a defining memory in my own life, as in so many others. And the show captured that so clearly, both the pain, but just as importantly, the joy and celebration of that time. I'm very pleased, therefore, to welcome Russell, Jill, and Christine to join us this evening, and to welcome Russell back to his hometown. In a moment, I'm going to ask each of our speakers to introduce themselves and to say something of their careers and achievements, and then I will engage them in conversations with a few questions. Following that, there should be an opportunity for our audience also to ask some questions. So if you could please use the Q&A function so that I can collect your questions together and ask them of our panel in the time that we have available. So, with no more ado, Russell, welcome, and please do introduce yourself.
Hello, thank you for that. Go away, Jill. Thank you for that, Martin. Thank you very much. I'm a Swansea boy. I'm sitting here in the Mumbles right now. I can see Swansea Bay out of my window. I went to Olchfa Comprehensive School, but I know people watching this from all over. So yes, became a writer, and Martin just did all my credits, and it's nice to be here. So fire away with some good. I love doing the Q&A at the end after, actually. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Jill, welcome.
Come on, love.
Hello, hi. Hello, well, my name is Jill Nalder. Yes, and I'm an actress. I'm also from Wales. I'm from Neath, as it happens, and I went to Dwrvelen Comprehensive, so I know there's some people listening that did go to school with me tonight, so that's lovely. And then I went to London to go to drama school, to theatre school. I became an actress. I've done a lot of musical theatre over my time, and yeah, the last year has been an absolute whirlwind since Russell asked me to be part of the whole experience of It's a Sin. So it's been a revelation. It's been an incredibly rewarding experience. And I also like a Q&A. So, you know, I know we are all short of time. There's plenty of people to talk to. So, yeah, I'll answer any questions later as well. That's lovely. Thank you.
That's great. Welcome. Good to see you. And Christine.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm a Swansea girl. I actually lived in Germany for over 23 years, from the age of about 19. And at the time I worked as a telephone counsellor in the early 80s for the equivalent of the Terence Higgins Trust. I came back to Swansea in 2000, smuggled my way into Swansea University on the basis of one A-level. And I never left, although now I'm working in an honorary research fellow capacity. And from the academic side, I think what really sits with me is anything to do with misuse of power, social injustice, inequality, discrimination, and stigma. And again, I welcome more interaction and questions than us three talking, you know. Let's listen to the audience and speak with the audience.
You must be busy, Christine, if you're fighting injustice and stigma in these days.
Never stop.
Oh my God.
Well, it will never stop.
It's
I will
getting
take
worse.
it to my grave.
It's getting worse. Dear me.
Great, thank you all very much. And yes, we will get an opportunity for the audience to join in with the questions. But first of all, just Russell, I mentioned a few of the programs and series that you have been responsible for. Can you just say a little bit about sort of where it all began for you? And was the plan always to be a screenwriter? And
oh, that's interesting. I mean, no, not really. When I was a little kid over there, I went to Ulster. I mean, there were no writers in my family. You didn't, I mean, this is why I thoroughly approve of television decentralizing from London, spreading out into what they call the regions, and we call the real world. But I thoroughly approve of that, because when I was young, you had to go to London, or in my case, Manchester. So I didn't even dream of it, to be honest. I used to invent little Doctor Who stories in my head. I didn't know it was possible. And there was so much less information now. You can go online and find writers' websites. Go to the, if you are interested in writing, go to the BBC Writers' Room website. That's a magnificent resource. But you know, there were whole courses. There were Swansea University courses about creative arts and creative writing. It didn't exist when I was young. So I spent a long time and not knowing who to do it. So I kind of did. I mean, I was always heading in that direction. I did English at university, which is nice and vague. And so I was, and Jill and I belong to a youth theatre, and that got me writing. The West Glamorgan Youth Theatre, which still exists, which is a truly brilliant youth theatre. Of course, in our day, it was funded, wasn't it, darling? It's like,
Absolutely,
I mean,
it's all changed now.
yeah, so that's all changed. That's all gone. West Glamorgan, this county of West Glamorgan used to have a youth theatre, a youth dance company, a youth orchestra, a vast orchestra, a youth choir, a youth jazz band. It was really astonishingly committed to the arts, and we benefited from that. They put on shows where they brought all those companies together. We put on vast musicals. It was really brilliant, brilliant place. So actually that got me writing. That's why councils should fund the arts, and that's why we should fight anyone cutting the arts, except they'll win. But so never mind. So that was how, theatre was what got me started, and then I kind of worked at the Sherman Theatre. Look, I've got posters behind me. That's the Sherman Theatre in the 80s. And I worked for the publicity. I drew those. I wasn't aware that I was going to point to them tonight. But I was I worked in the theatre. I belonged to the publicity. I worked in front of house in the publicity department. But eventually fell into television and started writing scripts. And that's when I kind of realized that was when I was happiest. I used to train as a television director, and I was a television producer. And over the years, so it was well into, it was until I was 30 or so, or 28, when I had my first proper drama on, a kid's adventure called Dark Season. And that's when it's like, it told me that's what you want to do. I was more proud of that credit and more excited by that being on than any producing job I'd done. So, you know, I kind of went, oh, that's the job. So I'm not one of those people who go, yes, I knew I wanted to write from the age of 5. I was writing on the nursery wall, all of that stuff. It just kind of, it was, well, actually, that's both true and untrue. It was there, now I look back. But I didn't have the language or the experience or the culture around me to make that a concrete thing. So until I found it for myself, but I'm glad I got there. Hooray.
yeah, so are we.
Some may disagree.
I doubt that. And was it always a conscious choice to write scripts about the LGBTQ plus community?
That's it, yeah, but it just rose up out of me because I started working, even on the first thing I wrote, which is just a kid's thriller. There's a great big Nazi villainess who's so clearly a lesbian, and she literally has a female blonde lieutenant at her side, being very close to her. And that wasn't me deliberately thinking I must put lesbians in. I told the actress playing that she was a lesbian. She was delighted. She was darling, how marvelous. But that wasn't me thinking, oh, I'll sneak a lesbian onto children's television. That was just me naturally writing what I write. And then I ended up getting a lot of work at soap operas, Granada Television in Manchester in those days. You remember that was a soap opera factory. So it wasn't like a campaign. I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, I can infiltrate with gay characters. Just natural. If I was thinking of a story, well, again, that's true and not true. Because yes, of course, I was thinking there aren't enough gay characters here, and I don't see them done properly. So that there was a militant side of my mind. There was also a part of my mind thinking, let's cast sexy boys, and that'll be fun. I was young and awful, and never touched them. It was genuinely like my love of those stories rising up, and good stories. So in those soap operas, did a lesbian vicar who was fantastic. I did teenage schoolboys coming out. a bisexual bridegroom in love with his best man. Yeah, you know, and actually what you discover there is what the world is discovering now is that actually there's new stories, untold stories in this. The more we delve into the other and the different and the untold, and we're not other and we're not different at all, but you know, the more we delve into those stories that haven't been told, the richer it is. And I was, and not just me, there was a whole little gang of us. There was a proper little gay gang working on those soap operas. And we all discovered that as we went along. We had a wonderful time and an enormous amount of freedom in a department run by a man called David Lidderman, a woman called Carolyn Reynolds and Tony Wood, who gave us so much freedom. So it wasn't a campaign, but it kind of was at the same time. And then all of that eventually led to Queer as Folk.
Yeah,
it's a long story.
I mean, Queer as Folk appeared in sort of 1999. As I said, you know, something of a shock at the time. How, I mean, probably a question to all of you, sort of, how do we think the sort of media has changed between Queer as Folk and It's a Sin? I mean, would Queer as Folk still be allowed today? I don't know. Have things become more liberal? Have things changed? Do we feel that these are easier stories to tell?
I mean, I'll kick off. I mean, I'd certainly get it made today. I get it made. Absolutely, I get it made. I don't doubt that. And in many, many ways, things are better. I have a very narrow focus because I've just got my life. So, you know, once I've written Queer as Folk, I'm very unlikely to walk into a meeting where someone's going to tell me to take the gay characters out. You just wouldn't have me in the room in the first place. Nonetheless, what am I on about? That's very self-aggrandizing and making me the hero of my own story, which is true. But and actually, drama commissioners are the most liberal bunch of people. Of course, they want gay stories. Of course, they do. I've never met one who would have the slightest objection to anything you might want to do. They want to find new stories and experiment and stuff like that. I think the great danger now is that we've got great levels of stories, and you'll always hear people complaining, saying there's not enough of this on television, none of that on television, and you enormously discover that those people don't watch television, or they watch the 3 shows that they like and they don't watch the rest. You can talk about television drama for about 15 hours before any of these people, these critics, will mention the soap operas, and the soap operas are full of LGBTQ characters and stories, but somehow they're marginalized in the debate. They're just not included. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Nonetheless, I think huge clanging warning bells are ringing as the giants rise up, as with Netflix and Disney Plus especially. I think that's a very great worry, where, you know, Loki makes one reference to being bisexual once and everyone's like, oh my God, it's like a pansexual show. It's like one word. He said the word prince. And we're all meant to go, thank you, Disney. Aren't you marvelous? It's pathetic. It's a ridiculous, craven, feeble gesture towards the vital politics and the stories that should be told. So they will damn us with their condescension in the end. So that's my worry now.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll
never follow that. I think, yes, in my opinion, it's improving. It's massively improved, and I think all diversity has improved on the screen in all ways. And when I listen to Russell saying about Disney and all that kind of thing, well, yeah, it's got a very long way to go. But I think we have, well, from Queer as Folk, which totally shocked people, especially the opening, you know, the whole of the first episode and everything. So people were absolutely amazed. I mean, we see much more representation of gay life, but there's a diversity in gay life that probably isn't shown, and that's, you know, it will be in certain films and things like that, but on the mainstream, I expect that there's a lot of diversity in people who still feel that they're not represented, or they're not seen, you know, much of. And also cultural communities, Muslim communities, Black communities, all those ethnicities, and the gay life in all those corridors of life, you know, that as Russell says, or as anybody says, is yet to be explored. So it's exciting. I mean, it's exciting to see it happening, and it's very exciting to be part of it and even be allowed to give an opinion, you know. So yeah.
Christine?
I think I would agree. I think things are improving. And obviously the media is it sort of interacts with society. Society can be mirrored in the media, and the media can affect society. So I see that interplay, and I can see that things are improving. But I forgot to say importantly at the outset, I'm a hetero woman, so I'm an ally. I'm an ally. But what worries me is, and I think a lot of these shifts towards expanding the gender spectrum and the acceptance of that and sexual orientation and any mix and match thereof has been very much driven by the communities themselves. So we see this empowerment, which I think is incredible. My concern is we are also seeing the rise of national populism and neo-fascism. And I think we're living in we're living on a knife's edge. We wear the badge of disgrace in the UK in terms of social and economic disparities. Mm-hmm. So we have perps, and well, I'm not happy with the victims, but we have perpetrators or people who are homophobic, transphobic, etc. But the system, our political system, is so systemically inept, and we should be ashamed of ourselves. And I think that we need to be, and I haven't got any solutions. As I say, I'll take these worries to my grave. Yeah. But I do have great concerns, and I think we can be seeing changes for the worst. Mm-hmm. And as an ally, any single thing that we can be doing to adding our voices in our actions, in our behaviours, that is one of my moral obligations.
I think that's good. Can I just say, because there's a question in the column from Alice Willis talking about the lack of asexual, aromantic characters. And yes, you're absolutely right. And that's the fight. But as Christine said, the more these communities fight for themselves and fight to get heard, it's like, Alice, do it, start the fight. Absolutely. I have portrayed asexuality in a documentary series called Tofu, and that's still on All 4, I think, which has a very good interview with an asexual woman who explains it very clearly. So we're trying. And I actually agree with Christine in the fact that I think it's a very great danger in meetings like this. Look at us, a bunch of liberals. I think we'll all sit here and go, oh yes, everything's so much more fluid, and the younger generation now, they're much more accepting, and all the figures say, and actually my friend Helen, who lives in Cardiff, she's got 2 boys, and she says, I go past that bus stop every day, and the misogyny and the violence of the language of the boys at that bus stop is far greater than anything we went through when we were kids. She said, there is literally 2 worlds. There's it's kind of a Twitter chatter liberal world of people saying, isn't everything marvelous now? And there's a much darker, don't start me on the poisoning of the mobile phone. We're channeling porn into every 8-year-old's head, hardcore porn. And then we wonder why those bus stops are full of misogynist, violent language. So we're in a very great mess, I think, at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Following that, Peter's question on the list there, that sort of, would Russell agree that the story is about how AIDS and gay life is experienced differently across time? And the work's been very much about the passing of time, and we've just been talking about time, and that sense of how has our attitude to HIV and AIDS changed over time?
Yeah, it was kind of important to do that because it was a crisis over time. There were some. I didn't want to tell the story of one person getting ill and dying, and there were some very great pieces of work about that. There's an Australian film called Holding the Man, about a man who dies of AIDS, which is magnificent. It's one of the greatest death scenes of any film you will ever see. It's never remembered in the list of great death scenes, or because it's a gay film, so it's kind of marginalized. It's up there with some of the greatest cinema ever made, but of course isn't, because it's seen as niche. But nonetheless, I felt that in order to portray the AIDS crisis as opposed to a man with AIDS, it needed time. We need to show, I would have done it over 20 years, except you would have had to start putting makeup on the actors and grey hair, and I think that never starts to work. We barely age them at all, because I think even over 10 years, because you just end up staring at the makeup. I think that thing's always dodgy. It becomes about the process rather than the drama. So yes, I had to show how it, and as you said, Martin, how attitudes change, and you go from the mystery of 1981, where it's that strange anniversary we just celebrated, where it's the most impossible unknown thing, to it being denied. People say that can't be possible. How is it possible to have a gay disease? To it hitting en masse, and the community educating itself and fighting back until, it was largely the community and good people within the NHS that transformed NHS. Jill can tell you about this. That transformed NHS wards from scary places into places of great rest and comfort and help and succor. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show, rather than one domestic incident. So, and it's still ongoing. But I'm talking about 10 years. It's 40 years later, and it's still changing. But, you know, you watch the news. Suddenly on the news last night, they're talking about, you know, those people who made the Oxford AstraZeneca virus working on an HIV virus. It was on prime time ITV News, and I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was really exciting that it still makes those headlines. So yeah.
And I think as well, when you think of it has totally changed, and it has gone through, you know, all that enormous change. But what I'm finding as people have spoken about it's a sin, is that there is still a stigma. Still, people are reticent to tell the truth about their diagnosis. The medication that came out made it easy for people to live a normal life, which is an absolutely obviously brilliant thing, but it also makes it easy to keep that quiet. And so people will be able to take their medication secretly and never mention again that they're HIV. So it still is surrounded by a kind of a stigma. I think maybe the younger generation, they have their different stigmas. A young person was saying to me that they talk about PrEP if you're not taking PrEP before you go out, and people have a little bit of a stigma if you're not looking after yourself in that way. But for people of our generation, my generation, that have been living maybe with triple combination for a long time now, they still want to be private. They still feel that people will judge them for that. So that's a long way to go as far as AIDS, as far as HIV goes. Not anything like the stigma it was in the 80s, of course, but it's a different stigma.
I think back in the 80s, one of the typical, you know, a stigma is a stain or a blemish. If we listen to Irving Goffman, and you know, as soon as someone had an external marker, for example, Kaposi syndrome or etc., these people were immediately identifiable. And I like to think, again, positive liberal attitudes, that things are changing. But as far as I'm aware, the medication regimes back in the 80s and 90s were so brutal, it was sometimes very difficult to be discreet, and really it was difficult to follow the regimes. So there was that need to hide things. And one thing I did want to bring up, which may be going slightly off topic, it absolutely shocked me when I returned to the UK, because this is still current and I find it abhorrent, is that on a medical note from a doctor, the diagnosis is listed. This is absolutely not the case in Germany. It's patient-doctor confidentiality, and people are still being outed. And the notion of self-disclosure, where they're coming to terms with the diagnosis, it's an assault on a person's free choice and dignity, and that's going on today.
Well said.
And I had to get that off my chest because I feel so strongly about that. Yeah.
Well said. Brilliant.
Scary, isn't it? It's absolutely scary, is what it is.
Yeah. But it is improving. Yeah.
It is, yes.
Trying to put on a happy face, you know, just always a mood lifter. Once I brought everyone down, I try and bring everyone back.
Oh, you're amazing. It's been brilliant.
You reported that It's a Sin sparked a surge in HIV testing, and a new dawn of awareness amongst young people in the 3 days that followed the airing.
Definitely, I think so. I think it can only be a good thing to create awareness on people looking after themselves with their health. There's no better thing than to be able to accept it and to go and to get a test, to know where you stand, and then to be able to deal with it, because now it's not a horrific death sentence. So you just know that you're going to be looked after, and there is a freedom in knowing the truth. That's what I imagine in any situation. And so so I think that it's a sin. Russell, brilliant. That can only be a good thing, that people are going for testing. And
I concur entirely. I think absolutely bravo. I think It's a Sin has done far much more than the most well-intentioned public health campaigns have managed to do. It's had such a huge impact. I think it's phenomenal, and my full respect for that. I'd like to raise is the fact that we also are living in a society where I work a lot in aging studies, where one of the least, a very poorly seen group with a protected characteristic are older people. So we're having older people now, you know, going through the life course. And what we're finding is that older people tend to be desexualized.
Yeah.
It's ageist erotophobia. So the GPs or medics wouldn't even think to question older people in terms of their sexual health. And if a person has to, for example, go into a care home, there's an assumption that that person is hetero and that there's, goodness me, blow me down, no sexual activities whatsoever. So what is going to happen to our older LGBTQ plus people when they go into care homes? How are they going to be accepted to live their true selves with their co-residents, with the staff? Will there be access to intimate space? So I think this is a problem again that we'll be having, well, we're facing now and probably more and more into the future as people are living longer.
Yeah.
Totally, that's a minefield.
You know, I'm trying to think of something cheerful to say at the end of that.
Well,
We're all going to die. We're all going to die. How's that?
The LGBT community have stepped up with other things, so I imagine that, you know, and the allies, we're not going to sit in silence and let people go into, you know, their old age feeling stigmatized and you know, segregated. I mean, that just can't be allowed to happen. So
No.
You know, but care homes, from what you understand and what you read and what you see, need a big makeover anyway, because there's a lot of things that need discussing as far as that goes.
Yeah. Some are excellent. Excellent care homes. There are really some excellent care homes, and a lot of them are dire.
It's not just care homes though. You try being on a general NHS ward. That's a very strict place.
There you go. I mean, there you go. You listen to that, and as an actress, you know, sometimes I sometimes involve myself with the medical profession doing the role plays, and you work with the medical examiners. As an actress, you work with the doctors, and so there is a lot of talk and discussion that goes on as the doctors are preparing for examinations in the way that they should approach patients. So there is a lot of dialogue is able to happen. And people are bringing things to the fore all the time. So hopefully there is grounds for improvement and room for improvement in all of that.
Yeah, and again, such changes take time, and it's change over time.
Because doctors themselves try to, and I have to say, I think the AIDS crisis led a way in medicine for being able to treat people holistically, and it's part of the way you treat cancer, and that treating people as a person. I think the LGBT community made huge moves to change the face of medicine and how people were treated as a human being, and had to be much more open and diverse. So I think that is improving all the time. I know.
Absolutely. I think the problem on those wards isn't the staff. I think it's the other patients.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. It can be a nightmare. That can be an absolute nightmare.
And in the care homes, funnily enough, it's often the attitudes of the staff as opposed to the residents.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, you know, it's
put the two together, we'll solve it.
I mean, it's a big debate. I'm not denying it, but I'm just saying that doctors are interested. But then you're saying about people on the ward.
Should we go into the same care home, Jill?
Yep.
Oh,
and you, Christine. Come on,
Martin, do you want to join us?
We'll have a great big gay corner. Come on, try and bring a pre-prejudice. Come on.
Come on.
Singing songs from the shows in the corner.
We've got a series of questions that are coming through now from our audience, and so, you know, a lot of them very good to see, and great that people are sharing their own experiences and sort of bringing in some of that. But first of all, there was one from Emma, which you've probably been asked a number of times, Russell, but interesting anyway. You know, the character of Richie, how much of that is you?
Well, she says my experiences. She doesn't say is it me. It's like anything you write is a bit of yourself and a bit of everyone else you've ever met. It's like I was like those characters. I was 18 in 1981, so the material for It's a Sin has been building up in my head for 40 years. I don't think there's a single line said in it that I haven't heard someone say. It's true. It's like everything's kind of. Yeah. So, you know, it's partly your own experiences. As a writer, I always stick to the guideline of like, a moment's imagination is worth a lifetime of experience. So you can invent anything you want to, but so it's very heavily researched. It's very heavily, and I did a lot of that with Jill, sitting down with Jill, and she had much more experiences on the wards with it, and she was much braver than I was, actually holding the hands of the dying. And I knew many of your friends as well and the experiences. So I plumbed Jill for a million experiences, but some of my own and everyone I've ever known, really. I mean, I'm a gay man living in Manchester, so I know an infinite amount of men and women who've had some sort of experience with HIV and AIDS, and I work with people like that. So it's everyone and everything. Some bits are me, some bits aren't. That's everything anyone ever writes, though. That's always the same answer.
Yeah, sure. And Denise says, I'm from Port Talbot, studied drama at Liverpool, 84-87, so related to much that's contained in It's a Sin. She's established an arts charity, making a film next year about discrimination still faced by young LGTB. She's got a question about Richie's mum in the final episode. She said you seemed to treat her harshly. There was a hint she was a target of abuse herself. Are you happy with the way she was portrayed?
Am I happy with the way I am the way she was portrayed? It's my that seems to imply I was outside the process. Yes, I mean, I think you're fighting your own sentence there. It's like she was treated harshly, but there was a hint she was abused. So that's not harsh. That's explaining why she was harsh. Yes, there's a very clear hint she was abused, and there's been a lot of interviews, but let's go and read up on interviews and research and stuff like that. She was very clearly, because that's my theory that it's not a theory, it's an absolute fact, but a homophobic household has something else wrong with it. There's something else going on there. It's you're not just if you stop loving your son and daughter because of their sexuality, what else is going on in that house? That's infinitely dark and layered inside your soul. So yes, that was the story of Valerie.
Yeah. Okay. And there's a question for Jill. How did you feel and cope with the intensity of shame that was embedded in the 1980s society? And was it a shock to recall it in the production? And
I think that's a really interesting question for me, because when you're living it and you are part and parcel of accepting it and trying to hide what you know is going to be a shame on other people, you don't really get the weight of it. You're just living it and trying to cope with it. And so you think that's the way that the world is. And people that I knew at the time were already being quite secretive about their lives, in hiding their sexuality from our school days. People, and Russell knows this, we grew up with people who were very open amongst ourselves, but to their families they couldn't be that open. So I think that you cope with it because you've got people that are living with the same thing all around you. You have the love and care of people that you love and care for, and so that all becomes part and parcel of the way that your life is, and you learn it in layers, I think, and then you learn to fight back in the same way. You suddenly think, okay, I can say something here, or I can do something, or I can help this situation. But I don't think now looking back, I don't think I even realised how much stigma there was. Even though you're living it, you look back and you think, it was so bad, but yet it's part of the life you're living. And so things that shock me now when I look back on it, and I think, God, really, we were living. Why were we living with that? It is quite incredible. And even things that have come to light, people have told me stories, and unbelievable stories of, what, you didn't know everything that was happening. You couldn't possibly, there was all kinds of prejudice around the world. I mean, some terrible things have come to light that I didn't even know about. So, I think that it's an amazing thing, the hindsight of it. You learn it, you live it, you cope with it, and then you look back on it and think, I don't know how I did cope.
Sure. Yeah. Nadia shares with us that I worked as a dentist treating HIV in the 90s, and as professionals, they were also experiencing prejudice, and those, it's important thing, those who were supporting as well, which is very
absolutely. And there would if that person was HIV positive as a dentist, if they were or their patient was HIV positive, it's a two-way thing, isn't it? I think gay dentists or if somebody with HIV as a dentist had a fear that they wouldn't be allowed to work. So it's all kinds of things. You know, that's we don't forget. It's part and parcel.
It's worth saying people were sacked. People were sacked.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's impossible now in some circumstances, but that was quite a regular thing.
Yeah.
Matt asks, do you think it should be studied in schools, the AIDS crisis, in personal and social education or modern history?
Yes, I mean, sexual health, full stop. Yeah.
And why not? You need to know, and you know, it's.
We need to start talking about. I mean, literally, it's like it's my theory about what we're doing to that younger generation with our mobile phones, with lack of censorship, with live streaming porn into their eyeballs. It's one of my major concerns in life. Never mind sexual health. That's like, yeah, whatever. It's like this needs controlling on a vast scale across the entire Western civilization. You wonder why kids, there's record numbers of depression and harm amongst young people because we're letting them watch hardcore porn at 8 years old with no context and no help, and it's our my God, they'll make dramas in 500 years' time about our civilization. We look like, we look like a Hogarth painting. We look like, gin houses of people drinking in the gutter or while the rich people feed on oysters and grapes, and we're nutcases, and we're letting this happen.
Yeah.
So actually, yes, let's educate them about sexual health, but that's just a tiny little bit of the vast reorganization of our approach to children and youth and how we talk to them and how we help them, which is well out of control. It's so out of control, no one knows what to do, actually, so we're all just ignoring it. But it's a massive problem.
Yeah. I'd see sexual health together with relationships and citizenship.
Yeah.
To bring the three to, and then embracing differences and celebrating commonalities. That would be an ideal,
and that should start very, very young, shouldn't it? You don't then you it's part of your formative ideals then, and things don't come as a
we start porn young.
Oh, not porn.
Do everything else.
I mean,
no, I know, but I'm saying we're very happy to start porn on young kids,
exactly.
but we don't start the good stuff on young kids.
That's right.
We go, oh no, you can't tell 5-year-olds about diversity. It's like, all right, then show them 2 girls, 1 cup. It's like we're completely out of control on this.
Yeah, that's 100% agree. 100%.
But it's also the case. I mean, certainly when I'm chatting to students, you sometimes forget that they're born after the millennium, and their sort of sense how much of this is history.
Yeah.
Or how much is it, you've talked about sexual health and personal engagements and things now, but is the AIDS crisis to be taught as history or
history, and as part of history, but as an ongoing concern, because it's not over in the world. It's not over in Britain. It's not over as a concept of how you live your life and how you have your relationships, your sex life, your casual sex, your intimate, everything. It's all part and parcel of your health care. It's all part and parcel of how you live. So yes, the history, this is what happened, but moving forward, it's part of the world, and it faces a lot of prejudice in very many countries around the world. It's not cut and dry by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, sub-Saharan Africa, my heart bleeds. My heart bleeds.
Sure. No, I was born in Tanzania, and just hearing the African story of AIDS is so different from the British one. But
it's not going to happen though, all this education. It's like we are wishing for a better world. We've got a government with a majority of 80. They're in power for at least 10 years, if not 15 years. Nothing's going to happen. They don't. We're a little chattering bunch of liberals tucked away in a little corner of the world, and they've got a little Zoom screen like that, while they rule the world and rule the media and let us burn.
You know, I'm the writer, don't you?
Changing the subject, a question for Russell. Apart from setting some of his work in Wales, how Welsh does he feel his work is?
I don't know. I've never wondered about that at all, really. I suppose it's all written by me. So, I mean, I do consider all my work to be gay, even if I'm writing straight, because I'm gay. Because I think if I wrote Romeo and Juliet, it would be gay, just because I wrote it. So I suppose maybe that applies to the Welsh thing as well. But I do often put Welsh characters in because I don't think there's enough on screen. And I do get very angry when non-Welsh people are cast as Welsh, because that accent's so hard to do, and the rubbish we've had to sit through. And I've actually genuinely behind the scenes made protests about that and changed things about that, and made people promise never to do it again. And I have, because it drives me mad. So I try.
And you've also made comments about sort of non-gay people playing gay characters.
Have you noticed me spouting off? Off I go. Yeah, I absolutely believe that. Yeah.
Yep. So Rebecca's asking, can we look forward now to a TV series about care homes, please?
Yeah. It would probably be yes. Okay.
I'd be an advisor.
Yes.
You can touch people's heart with anything, can't you? If there's good writing behind it, then you can open a door or you can open a window onto any life circumstance. So if there's good writing and good acting behind it, that's my belief on it. I think if it's beautifully written and beautifully acted, then then it will touch hearts. And the way that It's a Sin, the way that the response has been to It's a Sin, has been an incredible amount of young people being absolutely blindsided. They didn't know about it. It absolutely, I couldn't believe that, to be honest. I was amazed how many people just knew nothing about it.
So. It was amazing, wasn't it? Yeah. It's funny because we complain about people not knowing about it, but when we were actually confronted with it, it was amazing. It was really gobsmacking. And they were angry. I loved them. The young viewers were properly angry.
Yeah, incredible.
Alice makes an interesting comment, I think probably in connection with that. She says, my 13-year-old daughter has recently come out to me and her dad alongside her friends at school. This has been a positive experience for all of us, but I've seen a lot of dismissive comments on social media alluding to it as being fashionable for younger and younger people to come out. And again, sort of just picking up some of the sort of social media difficulties these days.
Well, I think that and personally, I think most people know their sexuality. I think when you're very, very young, you have an inclination of your sexuality. So she's not. It's good that it's young. It's not. You don't make yourself fashionable with your. You just know it's something within you. I knew.
Well, I mean, what you've done there is read stupid people. I mean, there were people online saying the earth is flat. They're wrong.
Yeah.
The people saying that it's fashionable are wrong. It's like, don't sit there worrying about wrong people. I mean, you need to I suppose, yes, you need to protect her and armor her with the right responses and stuff. But really, that's stupid. That's a really stupid thing. And don't worry about really stupid people. Just look after. And you sound like a wonderful parent. That's really brilliant the way you've accepted that. She'd be fine because you sound brilliant.
Yeah.
Yep. And Sarah asks, question for Russell. Henry's lonely death is something that will stay with me forever, especially as seeing it came hot on the heels of my own husband's dying of cancer. Emotions were heightened nationally because of the COVID crisis. Did the parallels with the COVID resonate with you, or with that of the AIDS crisis, or was the AIDS crisis quite different?
Sorry about your loss. Bless you. My husband had a cancer as well. It's quite a thing. Take care. Look after yourself. It'll blindside you many times. You know this already. Of course, it was all written before COVID. So we finished the shoot 1 month before the lockdown. Was it something like that, Jill?
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Absolutely, all over and all done before any of it. When there was just mentions of COVID in the world, so it didn't look like it was going to come to anything. It looked like it could be SARS or something like that, and it didn't look like it was going to come to anything. So.
Yeah,
I think it had a big effect. I think people had that kind of infectious pandemic, epidemic thing obviously in their minds. So there were parallels. And misinformation or the chaos, that's a definite parallel. The stigma, no, because nobody ever thinks there's no stigma to getting COVID, or there's nobody doesn't want to.
Well, my friend Amanda was here this afternoon, and her friend Simon's got long COVID. He's a respiratory specialist. So he knows how bad his lungs are. And he's like saying, no one's listening to me. there's a prejudice, there's a stigma. It's like
Yeah,
no
yeah,
help, no attention, no, here they go, making the same mistakes all over again, and people die.
I stand
Honestly,
corrected
just,
on that then,
just
because that's
hold that.
true.
No, I know what you mean,
I
darling.
agree with you. That's true. I mean, I wasn't thinking of it like that, but that's an absolute example of. I was just thinking of that horrible, you know, the sympathy that has gone to the people that have died of COVID, the enormous outpouring of love that there's been to the people that have had COVID. And I feel like our boys and our friends and our families and and the allies, they're getting their love now, 40 years later, because people loving them now and thinking, wow, you know, they should have had a bit of love and care at the time. And that's what I was meaning as with the comparison of the stigma, rather than well, there's all sorts of. I mean, there's so many rumors about COVID, you know, all the man-made rumors and all that stuff. You don't know what's going on. There's plenty of misinformation about it, or lost information.
Yeah, it's the same nonsense.
That was very, very similar, I think.
Yes.
There's also a question, again, sort of looking at the end of the series. You ended the series before any of the real treatment started coming in. And again, was that a sort of deliberate decision?
No, not really. It was. I always said it would be 10 years, because I think after 10 years, we would start to age the actors. And it's not a history of AIDS. Otherwise, we'd still be running. It would be 40 years long. It's not touching every moment in history. It's like, I was always very sad actually that Princess Diana is shaking hands with people on a hospital ward. I couldn't include. It would have looked like Zelig if Richie had been standing there when Princess Diana walked in. I wouldn't have believed that. And I was sad that in terms of the history of AIDS, okay, we forget, you know, that's become almost a cliche to say that about Princess Diana. We forget what a magnificent thing she did. Well, look at that family. That family won't even let you, to this day, won't let you have a black baby. And to what she did then by shaking hands on a ward was literally astonishing and breathtaking and transformative and helped save lives. Truly, it's really hard to believe that, but it really, really happened. So I was sad that I couldn't include that, but a lot of the history isn't included because I think that, I mean, that's a good drama. Maybe one day I'll take it, someone or I will take a different approach and tell it that way, but I had to experience it. It's life in that era, experienced by those 5 people. And if you've gone on past 10 years, you would have had to start changing the hair or even recasting and stuff like that. And it just, in my opinion, that just, plenty of dramas do that very well. But I just think it would have lost it. So it could never have gone on much longer. And it's not a drama about finding a cure. It's not.
No.
It's not sitting. That's a false drama that we, you know. It's a historical drama. It's like, is there a cure? It's not about that. It's about what happened to those people who were alive at the time, and how some of them died. Yeah.
And the cure was, you know, not the cure, but the control of the illness was a fair bit of time after.
Well,
as well, you know, it was a fair bit into the future. There was quite a few more years in real life that, you know, which was 96 or 95, 96 when they started talking about the triple combination, and
it's funny, even then we fall into that. I've noticed we all fall into a trap of talking about 1996 as though everything changed.
Yeah,
it took another 10 years for us to kind of believe it. Kind of go, oh yes, that's working. Those treatments are working.
Yeah, right,
like, exactly. we really fall into that trap and go, 1996, everyone went like this, hooray! And we did absolutely not. It was as bad for many, many years to come.
What happened was they came back and said, wow, we think we have something that is looking really promising here.
Yeah. But they've been saying that about lots of things.
Totally.
Yeah, so
you've got to get it as a regime. You've got, well, you'll know them, Dr. Dobbs. You know that it's
Christine. Oh, don't call me doctor. I feel a fraud if you call me doctor.
I like Dr. Dobbs.
I mean, you know how long it takes for, you know, patients to get through to the regimes, get it out, get it tried, get it, you know.
No, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a psychologist.
No, I know, but it's in the world. You know that people don't. You know, it takes a long time for people to get used to taking medication and to believe it and deal with the side effects. And you know, it didn't. What I'm agreeing with Russell. It didn't happen overnight. It was a very slow burn. And now it's amazing. Now the treatments are really amazing.
Yeah.
But as long as you get tested.
As long as you get tested.
You know. I'm not telling you that.
John, the co-chair of our LGTB+ staff network, asks Russell, you've done such an incredible job making our community more visible. What parts of the LGBTQ plus community do you personally think need more of a spotlight to increase understanding?
Well, anyone that doesn't have a spotlight, it's I mean, the trans most fascinating culture war at the moment or it's not even a culture war, it's a war between trans rights and feminism is very distressing, I think, and another example of how the right wing is laughing and sending us off, like spinning us like battling tops, so we'll go bouncing off each other in our little corner. People who should love each other arguing with each other, and while the right wing laughs at our dismay. God, they're getting away with murder, quite literally. So that person earlier talking about asexuality, I do think there's always something not being told. Honestly, there are very good dramatic urges saying you might not see the results on screen yet, but let's portray trans stories. We're doing that very well in soap operas, but let's do that. Asexuality will come across, and yet what I was talking about earlier of that misogyny and violence amongst young boys at the school bus stops, I don't think anyone's dramatizing that anyway. No. Where's that being talked about? It's like, again, our liberal sides are kind of liberalizing ourselves. And I do sometimes think we're missing the bigger picture that we don't rule the world at all. And there's enormous darkness. We're sorry, Christine.
Yeah. No, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. I'm done. Honestly, go on. Dr. Dobbs, please.
yes, sir. What I find, it really interests me is my understanding of the trans and the gender non-conforming community. To me, as an ally and the gracious people I've spoken to, it seems to me that the older generation are still defining in the binary, so cis or trans female, cis or trans male, and because we're now looking at the whole gender spectrum and acknowledging that spectrum and where people may be positioning themselves, and it could take a journey to find out where they feel comfortable along that spectrum. So we're going to have people who may be female-born or male-born, but will identify as gender fluid or non-binary or gender non-conforming. And I'm wondering what the feminist extremists how are they going to deal with what I believe might be a huge up-and-coming cohort? They're going to have to deal with it. Mm. Where can they pigeonhole them?
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a question.
That's like the coming war, isn't it? Yeah.
Jane,
there's got to be a solution. These are good people, good experiences who should, and the fact that they're arguing is very distressing. And there are people laughing at us. There are people laughing at us, worrying over this.
Jane asks a question that sort of fits into this. You have all referred to us being liberals, but do you believe that things will and can change? And if so, how do you think all this may happen?
I kind of mean liberal with a small L, obviously. It just mean soft and left and questioning. Do I believe things can change? Well, they do, I suppose. How long? We've got half an hour?
Can I answer with a rather provocative gesture?
Yep.
We've got to fight.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean down Swansea Wine Street well after midnight.
Oh, now I recognise.
Or on people with spice or anything. But I think it's really, especially as an ally, we have to stand up at every opportunity that we have when we see or witness injustices. And then systemically, though, our institution is so based on the bias of meritocracy. How can we fight, any of us, fight the elitism and the old boys network that is the UK?
We're run by Eton school bus. Absolutely. It's insane.
And you got to just, I guess, all you can do is keep on trying. I mean, that there's plenty of people who want to make changes. So I think trying to get people together, trying to get solidarity, trying to get those that are trying to make changes, and as you say, to keep up the fight. Really, that's all you can do. Like one person can make a difference. That is the truth.
Because Jill, you're very modest here, and you're an enormous environmental campaigner, climate change campaigner. You devote a lot of your life to that, don't you? Which
Don't start me on climate change.
but do that. That's the point. Do you're brilliant, honey. You're
I
wonderful.
have to say, that I think the
You
world
have to do.
has massive problems, and that problem has been looming up at us for the last 40 years, and we choose to ignore it, and we still you hear little things about it. You are beginning to hear, but that is 40 years too late. This is how we should have been speaking 40 years ago about the climate and the environment. We are way behind, and so that is something that, again, there are people fighting for change. Without the people that have fought for change, for the environment, and without people that are protecting species and stuff that are out there, we would be in a dire situation. We are in a dire situation, but my God, it would be even worse. So, people, I think there are people out there trying to make a difference in all walks of life, is what I'm saying. And indeed, we can make a difference in the LGBTQ, being allies. You and I, Christine, and Russell's done more than one person in a lifetime. My goodness, you've made a difference.
Yeah.
Do you think, because it's like, and this is kind of like, this is a theory that's just air, really, but sometimes I think the rise of the right and the rise of the populism is connected to climate change. I think we know this planet's getting hotter. We know it's going wrong, and that makes us entrench ourselves. That makes you vote right wing. That makes you say it's all going to be fine if we just stay exactly as we are. I do think, I really, in my heart, believe it's all the same thing.
It's all part and parcel of not facing, the fact that we have to change, and we do have to change, and it's hard for everybody. It's hard. I'm no saint. It's hard for me environmentally. I've driven a car, I've travelled, but we all have to rethink what we do.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
We're burning.
But it's easy to pretend it's not happening. But
it's weird, isn't it? Like when Canada burns, like it was burning 2 weeks ago. Where's the Canadian Prime Minister standing up saying in the UN saying we are burning?
How can it be right?
Why is that? This passivity is so bizarre.
It just goes like it's another news item, and then you see people trying to cool down, and you see them in the scene.
It's his country, or her country. I don't know who's in charge in Canada.
It's so wrong that it's 50. It's so wrong. The weather's wrong now. Here we are in the UK. The weather's wrong.
And the First Nations bodies of children that have been found in Canada.
We're running out of time. Conversations do this.
I know. We have gone a tad off topic. Yes.
Sorry. Come through. One last question, which I think I know the answer to, but just to sort of your point, Christine, that we should sort of perhaps end on a lighter note. But Andy asks, should the next Doctor be gay? And then in brackets, have they always been a bit gay?
No, I'm not even answering that because it'll just be quotes all over the place. And it's like I can still answer and say, Jane Draper, who wants to know about your views, who's got 2 teenagers and so asking about social media and pornography. I would completely censor what they're watching. I would control it. If they wait till they're 13, 14 years old, measure what they're watching, fight their access and watch what their friends are watching. I would monitor it and censor it like a bastard.
Thank you,
Jane.
Can I also?
Great question. Yeah.
Can I admit that I am secretly in love with Captain Jack as well from Torchwood?
Thank you.
Thank you, and to others, we're very sorry. There were lots of questions this evening, and not been able to cover all of them, and so I just want to thank everybody for their contribution on that. We have almost reached 7 o'clock, unfortunately. It has been a great conversation. I think we've covered a lot of interesting topics and very important topics, and so can I thank our 3 speakers, particularly Russell, Jill, Christine, for your time and for making the time to come and join us here this evening. I think that's been great. And to thank all the rest of you for joining us this evening and for the questions that have come in and made this a sort of, it's a virtual event. It would be great when we can meet together and share together, but at this time, it has been a really sort of enjoyable evening. And I think a very enlightening one for all of us. So thank you all very much for your time this evening. And I'm afraid these kind of events do tend to end fairly abruptly, but enjoy the rest of the evening.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you as well. Thank you.
Pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.